Lord, on this special day, we ask that you do indeed open our hearts and our minds with your very presence, so that as these scriptures are read and your word proclaimed, that we may not only hear them with joy, but that we will enact upon them this day. For we ask it in your Son's name. Amen. How many of you are morning people? Okay. Go ahead. Nobody's going to throw a stone at you. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not alone. As you can see, not everybody is a morning person. Journalist Earl Wilson once wrote, "There ought to be a better way of starting the day than having to get up." Statistics have shown that morning people are some of the most productive people in the world. CEOs and athletes and artists and countless of people have deemed their success at being a morning person or from being a morning person. Now, that doesn't mean those of you who are not morning people are going to be ultimate failures, but it just means that people with a morning attitude may have a little leg up on some other people. Because sometimes I watch people who have called themselves ambitious and passionate litter the social media with how they hate Mondays, or it's way too early to do something like this, and I look and it's 12 o'clock, and they continue to chase their dream by slamming the snooze button 4 or 5 times in the morning. But what science has proven time and time again is morning routine sets the pattern for the rest of your day. Well, I'm one of those weird people that loves mornings. I'm usually awake between 4 and 4:20. And by 4:30, the coffee is brewing. And 5 minutes later, I'm enjoying that first cup. And I really do like getting up early and going out on the deck and hearing the birds wake up. Then they start chirping, and I hear the geese fly over and the ducks fly over. And then the sun starts breaking into the darkness. Now, I'm not sure if that's DNA or if it was environment, but I know that my paternal grandparents, they were early birds. If you slept past 5 o'clock, they thought you were a full-blown sinner. Now, of course, they were in bed by 7 p.m. My maternal grandparents were not sloths, but they didn't quite get up that early. They were a little later, but breakfast was on the table at 6 o'clock, 6 a.m., and the table would be covered with eggs sunny side up, with grits and bacon and sausage and stewed tomatoes and sliced tomatoes and heaps of thick and heavy Paul Bunyan biscuits. Did I mention sausage gravy? And in the summer months, my grandfather always made sure there were some hash browns on the table somewhere. Yes, I loved mornings then, and I still do love mornings, although mornings are not quite as enjoyable as they used to be. When Arthur enters into your world, it kind of takes a little something off of it. You know who Arthur is, don't you? Arthuritis? Yeah. So sometimes in the morning, instead of saying, good morning, Lord, I say, good Lord, it's morning. And I don't sit straight up in the bed, I have to roll out. Morning, however, is really the best part of my day. It's the beginning of something new. There's something fresh about morning time. The frustrations and the failures and the gaffes and the mistakes that I made yesterday, and I make them big time, kind of just get washed away in the gentle rain of a good sleep. Now, unless the faults and failures and mistakes I made yesterday left a scar, I can choose what of that to bring into my new day. I can leave it all there, or I can let some things in. Now, not everybody's a morning person. I remember one of my dear friends, I went hunting with him for the first time in Estill, South Carolina. And it was a little farmhouse on the edge of a bunch of cotton fields. And we had to get up at 4, which was pretty good for me. I enjoy getting up that early, but my friend didn't like it quite that much. And as I'm running about the house, getting my clothes on and grabbing a little breakfast and whistling and humming and singing and all this, my friend is sitting in his chair at the table now, still in his skivvies. And one time when I passed him, he said to me, "Are you always this happy in the morning?" And I stopped. I said, "Yeah, usually." And I went on to do my thing, and I came back, and he said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah. You make me sick." Yes, I'm still pretty much a morning person. And that doesn't necessarily mean I enjoy the actual act of getting up every morning, but I do enjoy that part of the day. Mornings are filled with promise. They feel so crisp and clean and fresh. And the old day, as I said, has just passed away. Now, there are 24 hours in the day, right? Duh. As the young people say, duh. 24 hours in the day. And it just dawned on me this past week, sometimes I'm slow, but it just dawned on me this past week that God could have resurrected Jesus on those other 23 hours. Couldn't he? Yeah. Resurrection could have taken place at lunchtime. We could be having lunch worship services on Easter. Or it could have been mid-afternoon. It could have been early evening. It could have been at midnight, God forbid. It could have been at midnight. But no, the resurrection took place in the morning. And I think there was a reason for that. Morning is new. I think God chose that. It was not an accident. It's the pre-dawn of a new day. He pulled Jesus from that tomb and launched a new created order. You know, it was our primordial parents that messed things up way back in that beautiful garden. But in this garden of death, God reaches into that tomb and pulls out life. Don't you love that song, "Morning Has Broken"? It's my favorite song. Morning has broken. And if you unpack that song, when she wrote that poem, people assume that she wrote it about creation itself. But she didn't just write it about creation. She wrote it about the new creation. The recreation, the recreation. It's about Easter. She talks about the recreation, the new day, the new dawn. Easter, you see, reminds us that death is not the end of life. Life is the end of death. The women of our text this morning were in deep despair and mourning, and they had suffered an unimaginable loss. They had been with Jesus for over 2 years. They had seen the teachings. They had seen the healings. They saw the tenderness. And then strong hands, strong evil hands, destroyed that life. He was beaten to the edge of life and then crucified and hung like a common criminal. And that thud of that rolling stone in front of that tomb just didn't seal Jesus into the tomb. It sealed in their hearts and minds pain and anguish and loss. Everything in their soul turned as dark as the night inside that tomb. A hammer and just a few nails and cross pieces of wood had changed their entire world in a matter of hours. But while the men hid themselves away in fear behind locked door, because they're afraid that they're next on the cross, they're afraid that having followed Jesus is going to put them to death as well. They're hidden away. These women, out of love and compassion, obligation even, they buy the spices to go back to that tomb and prepare his body properly. And they go not sure if they're going to be able to get in or not, but they go anyway. Because they know they can't roll that stone away. But when they arrive, it's already gone. It's already been rolled away. The mourning of the morning has been altered. The M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, the mourning in that morning had been altered by the rolling away of that stone. And the more I think about it, the more I've come to realize that it was just as important for God to roll that stone away to pull Jesus from death to life as it was for those women to look in and see where he had laid. And the older I get, the more certain I become that there is a God and I'm not God. God does things I would never do. God does things in ways I would never do them. God does things when I would never do them. And when I think all is lost and things can't get any worse, guess who shows up? The Holy. And on that morning of mornings, God had other plans. On that morning, sadness and grief, God had another notion for that. God decided to shake things up and present a gift to creation it neither expected nor deserved. And like most of us, when we're filled with grief, we forget things. We forget things. So these women go, and the stone is rolled away, and there's this heavenly being telling them that Jesus is not among the dead, that Jesus is among the living, and Jesus has already gone ahead of them, just like he had said to them earlier. Now I wonder, and they become women of the morning, of the Easter morning. They go from the morning in a morning to an Easter morning. And I wonder if we're mourning people, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, or mourning people. I don't know what your heart was like when you came here this morning. You may have come here with joy and a sense of gladness because you anticipated a moving and uplifting service and fine music from the choir. And you may have come here just because this is what you've always done on Easter. Grandma made you. And you don't want to disappoint Grandma, right? Or things didn't work out so well this past week and you thought maybe this would help some. Whichever reason, we're happy and glad you're here. Because if you're looking for something more powerful than evil, if you're looking for something more powerful than darkness with a further reach than place and time itself, and more enduring than death, then you came to the right place this morning. If you're looking for something more meaningful than chocolate bunnies, Cadbury eggs, and shoes that are pinching because they're too tight, you found it. If you're looking for an end to the morning of brokenness and loss, you found it. Because Easter reminds us He's alive. He's alive. He's alive. So good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And that's really not a greeting, because it is a good morning. It's truly a great day. It's the celebration of the first morning of a new age of being. It's the morning when we remember that someone has gone from death to life and has given us the promise of that very same way. Dr. Siemens tells of a Muslim who was converted to Christianity in East Africa. And the new Christian was asked by someone what led him to this new faith. And he said, well, it's like this. Suppose you were going down a road and suddenly that road forked into two directions. And two men stood at that fork. And one was dead and one was alive. Who would you follow? He chose to follow the one who was alive and still in this world. And that takes us to Edith. Edith lived in San Antonio, Texas, and a patient of Dr. Will Phillips, no relation. And Will was a general practitioner. And Edith had gone to him because of some high blood pressure. And Dr. Phillips learned to really appreciate Edith. Edith was a staunch saint. She was a staunch Christian, and she believed in evangelism. And the first time he met Edith, he was standing in his office looking through a glass window into his waiting room, and this little woman was going around the waiting room asking people, do you believe in Easter? And if they said yes, she told them the story of Easter. And if they said no, she told them the story of Easter. And over time, Dr. Phillips said he actually started calling the waiting room at his practice Edith's birthing room, because she birthed so many Christians out there in that little room. Well, this went on for some time, and then he had to call Edith to come to see him because he had some bad news. He had some test results back that were not good. And Edith bounced herself into his office. And she said immediately, well, Dr. Phillips, why are you so sad? Are you still reading your Bible? Are you still praying? Edith, for a few minutes, he said, let me be the doctor and you be the patient. And then with a heavy heart, he said, Edith, the lab results came back. You have cancer and you really do not have long to live. And she said, why, Dr. Phillips, shame on you. Why does that make you sad? You just told me I'm going to be with God and where I can celebrate Easter for eternity. Now, where are you so sad? You're punching my ticket to eternity. Why are you so sad? And Dr. Phillips said, Edith, I am sorry. Well, within 2 months, Edith was admitted to the hospital, and Dr. Phillips made sure she had a real nice room, and it was a private room, but every time a nurse came into her room, Edith would say, do you believe in Easter? And if the person said no, she told them the story. If they said yes, she told them the story. Nurse after nurse after nurse. And then there was Phyllis, an RN nurse, and who had been a MASH RN in the Vietnam War. She was hard as nails. And Phyllis comes walking in, and Edith says, Phyllis, do you believe in Easter? And Phyllis says, you can stop that nonsense right now. I don't want to hear it. You're a religious nut. Don't talk to me. But every time Phyllis came in that room, Edith kept saying, do you believe in Easter? Kept asking, do you believe in Easter? Do you believe in Easter? And finally, Phyllis softened. And she came in by herself, and she went to Edith's bed, and she said, Edith, tell me the story of Easter. And Edith told her the story. And with tears streaming down her cheeks, Edith asked her, do you believe in Easter? And Phyllis said, I sure do. I sure do. Well, the very next week, Phyllis goes into Edith's room on a Friday and says, Edith, do you know what day this is? And Phyllis says, it's Easter. And Phyllis says, no, it's Good Friday. And Edith says, no. Every day is Easter if you believe in Easter, even Good Friday. Okay, Edith, okay, it's Easter. Well, Phyllis couldn't wait for Easter to come and to bring Edith some gifts, Easter gifts. And when Phyllis walked into the room, she knew immediately that Edith was no longer among the living. And she went over to her bed and she put the gifts at her feet. And she went and stood beside Edith. And Edith was lying there with a peaceful look on her face, a little light smile, with her big black Bible open. And it was turned around where somebody else could read it, not her, but turned around. And her fingers were pointing towards a verse. And the verse was this: in my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you, and I will come again and receive you to myself. And where I am, you may be also. And in her left hand was a bookmark. And the bookmark read, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, and there shall be no more pain, for former things will have passed away. And with tears just pouring down Phyllis's cheeks, she leaned over and she kissed Edith on the forehead, and she said, good morning, Edith. Happy Easter. And Phyllis immediately turned and made her way to the door. And when she exited the door, there in the hallway were two young nurses sitting beside each other, talking to one another. And she went over and she leaned between the two of them. She says, hi, I'm Phyllis. Do you believe in Easter? Do you love mornings? Do you love Easter? Do you believe in Easter? Easter makes every morning a great morning for those who believe in it. Not only does Easter morning set the attitude of the rest of this day, Easter morning sets the attitude of our souls for a lifetime. We don't have to remain in the brokenness. We don't have to remain in the heartache, the shame, or the loss. We don't have to fear tomorrow because the risen Christ is already there. Christ has risen. Christ has risen.
Christ has risen indeed.
Christ has risen.
Christ has risen indeed.
Amen.